Who would have thought a little bit of color would have made games cost a lot more money? I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today we look at Game Boy Color expensive video games.
Second Opinion Games.
Before we get into some of the bigger, more expensive games, I want to talk about some of the ones that you can find for under $50, but still are quite expensive for what they are. Take a look at Space Station Silicon Valley. Now, of course, this was also a Nintendo 64 game, but I think it plays pretty darn good on the Game Boy Color. It starts off with a fully animated cutscene with a guy and a robot arguing over the radio station in outer space. As many times as I watch this cutscene, I gotta tell you, it's hilarious every single time. Eventually, they do crash land on the planet, and then one of the microchips flies out. Now you have to possess animals in order to collect all the different power to get your system up and running and move on to another place. So this game is all about taking over animals. Not just real animals like dogs that can bite things, or sheep that can float around. Yeah, I gotta love the sheep in this game, but also things like mice with tires for arms so they can just roll around really fast and also whip their tail. This is a very interesting puzzle game and is definitely one you should have. How about Quest RPG Brian's Journey? With a name as unique as Brian's Journey, I just can't believe this game didn't sell very well. Yeah, it's a JRPG in a sea of JRPGs on the Game Boy Color, and it would play pretty much exactly how you think it would. It's no Dragon Warrior, but it is pretty decent, and even though RPGs aren't personally for me because of all the reading and whatnot, at least this game has plenty of sheep that keep me interested. Heck, I'm beginning to think if you want an expensive game, you have to throw sheep in it. Then we have Ghosts and Goblins. They tried to recreate the original NES game on the Game Boy Color. Of course, it was way too difficult on the Nintendo, so switching it over to a much smaller screen would make the game pretty much unplayable if they didn't make it a little bit easier. So luckily, they did. Also, they changed the way the weapons work, so the knife is almost exactly the same as the lance, and the fire even shoots all the way across the screen and does a pretty decent amount of damage, making it somewhat useful. And it's a good thing because there's one spot where you have to get it. There is no way around. Luckily, it does do the job pretty good. This game overall is still extremely difficult, but at least it has a password system and infinite continues, so you will be able to complete it. Also, the stages themselves are a lot shorter, and some of the more annoying enemies die much quicker. This is actually a pretty good game and is definitely one I prefer. That brings us to Rhino Rumble. This was made by Telegames, a company that was known for all of its Jaguar games that it made in the 90s, and that didn't really set the bar too high for me here. And this is something that is certainly unique. It's a run-and-gun action platformer where your protagonist is a rhinoceros. And the game definitely has its own sense of humor here too about it. Now, pay close attention to the detail on the Rhino. When you go into the desert levels, he actually puts on some sunglasses. And even your enemies have quite a bit of animation to them. When you shoot the mummy cats, the bandages fall off and you get to see that they were cats underneath. I really enjoy this platformer, and it definitely moves much faster than most of the platformers on the console. If you like your games on the weird side and you're up for the challenge, this is definitely for you. Okay, it's time to get into some of the more expensive stuff, like Magical Chase. Now, this comes from a series that's known for being ridiculously expensive. Like, check it out on the TurboGrafx on eBay and tell me if you'd rather buy a car or this game. However, on the Game Boy, it's only going to cost you about $60, which is a bit of a deal in itself. Now, if you play on easy, you'll probably notice nothing special about this game. However, on medium or hard difficulty, you'll find out that the screen becomes full of sprites. Luckily, you have plenty of life, which means you could get hit multiple times before you die, and you'll probably die quite a bit, unless you happen to be really powered up with the stuff you buy from the item shop. You could buy extra hearts for life, or even different weapons, and every stage has more weapons you could buy to keep the the game balanced. Nothing's worse than having a vertical shooter that you just become so overpowered you just walk all over everyone. And this game definitely doesn't let you do that. Now there is some parallax scrolling going on, as well as the levels themselves creating really tight spaces for you to fly through. This is probably the best shooter on the Game Boy Color. But that isn't the only expensive shooter on the platform. Check out Space Marauder. Now, I like to think that I'm playing as Boba Fett himself, traveling through the skies, shooting down everything. After all, it's a one-hit kill, just like Boba Fett himself, and he can shoot in any direction. This leads to bosses having a very unique challenge to them, trying to get to shoot at certain weak points and flying around them, and yeah, this creates a pretty interesting game. On top of it, the graphics look like some of the best on the console, and I gotta say, this is a lot of fun. Even if you do power up to OP standards, it still holds up pretty darn well. And coming in at $70, it's definitely gonna hurt your wallet. So if shooters are your thing, and Magical Chase was just too cutesy for you, this one has all the skulls to tell you that you're playing a man's game. But being cute doesn't mean that it's gonna be a bad game. Check out Wendy Every Which Way. Now, Wendy here is from the Casper the Friendly Ghost series, and I thought this game has to be just one of those sort of cute games for kids. And when I started playing, I noticed that it was a pretty decent action platformer game. Now, it moves a little on the slow side, but that's okay because the Game Boy Color just wasn't some type of huge beast. You want your platformers to play a little bit slower. As I played through the game though, I found out that this is so much better than I ever expected. The puzzle elements here are unbelievable because Wendy can control gravity itself. So she's always flipping it up and down, walking on the ceiling, walking on the ground, and this creates really interesting puzzles with both spikes and enemies that you have to shoot down with your magical wand that you could power up to 5 times. However, the power of your wand is also connected to your life. So if you get hit, you will be downgraded. If you lose all the power, Wendy is dead. But keep in mind, this is more about the puzzles than about the action, and it is definitely full of them both. This could be the very best game on the entire Game Boy Color lineup, and I am not saying that lightly. And coming in at $85, it better be. Now, most people call Metal Gear on the Game Boy Color Ghost Babble. That's because its name in North America is Metal Gear Solid. And most people saw the box and thought, well, I could get it for the PlayStation or I could get it for the Game Boy Color, and rightly picked the PlayStation version. But what you didn't know is that this is a completely different game, which is why I didn't buy the game back in the day and completely started punching myself later when I found out that this was a totally new Metal Gear experience, and it feels sort of like the old Metal Gear from the NES and the newer style from the PlayStation. You can knock on walls to lure guards away, and everything is broken down in a much easier form in small little bite-sized chunks that you could replay as many times as you want to try and get the top score. So it's perfect for handheld play, and it is definitely perfect for long-term sitting events because, after all, this is another great Metal Gear game. Ghost Babble cost me $35 when I picked it up, but now it's about $85. So if you haven't already secured a copy, this one's only going to go up from here. Return of the Ninja is also one that's pretty hard to find. This is a 2D action platformer that you play as a ninja, either boy or girl, depending on which one you prefer. You could even have some magical fireball attacks and different ninja maneuvers in here. There are some puzzle elements that you have to use to solve the levels, and multiple ways of going about each of the levels. There are bosses that will kick your butt, and enemies that are relentless, but the most unique thing about this game is that it's also a stealth action game. So if you manage to sneak up on your enemies and kill them, well, then you'll get a much higher score at the end of the level. This was rather interesting, and it might be one of the first 2D stealth games that was ever made. And that's probably why it costs, well, I don't know what it costs, because I haven't been able to find a single copy on eBay in the past month. Lastly, we have Shantae. Now, this game came out after the Game Boy Advance did, so most people never even knew of its existence. It's probably why it's selling for about $500 for a legit copy to this day. So, I have me a reproduction card. Also, there is bonus elements in this game if you happen to play it on a Game Boy Advance rather than a Game Boy Color. So, it gives you a shot to play through the game all over again. Now, this is a Metroidvania style game that is better than many of the Metroid games themselves, believe it or not, and even a ton of the Castlevania ones. Shantae has tons of different layers of animation to her, the music here is great, and the gameplay is nearly flawless, making this probably one of the most perfect Holy Grail packages to ever come together. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I had a great time making it, and no, this wasn't every single really expensive game for the Game Boy Color, just the ones that I prefer playing and wanted to really talk about. Of course, there are plenty of RPGs for the system, and Pokemon games that sell for a crap ton of money, but I don't care about those at all. I mostly care about the games like Space Station Silicon Valley, which is unbelievably well, and I really love that opening cutscene. Wendy Every Which Way was probably my biggest surprise on this list. Man, this is unbelievably good, and if you haven't given it a shot, well then I don't know what you're missing. It's also made by Way Forward, which made the Shantae game, which is just perfection. So I want to know what your favorite Game Boy Color game is, because I didn't even talk about my favorite one, and I'm saving that for another video altogether. So until later, I will see you again, guys.